The Swedish Midsummer, a national holiday celebrated by countless many Swedish citizens and even around Scandinavia itself. It's a tradition traced back into the days of the Vikings, and according to some sources, this has been the roots of the Swedish Midsummer. However, modern day celebrations has more of a Christian meaning to it, even if it doesn't have the same impact as it used to have. This weekend was the scenery of the midsummer holidays, and I've been away celebrating and spending time with my family. And for me, it's connected to a lot of things. Things such as dance, singing, good food, friends and family, drinking, and summer activities like fishing, barbecue, and more. There is so much of a different ways to celebrate midsummer in Sweden. This holiday is also synonym with an event that had a great impact on the future of Sweden when the rest of Europe was under siege. It would take part during a 3-day back and forth debate reasoning of what kind of decision to make. For everybody who doesn't know this is the Swedish Midsummer Crisis of 1941. On June 22, 1941, the largest invasion force at the time, and still today, started crossing the German-Soviet border, and Operation Barbarossa had begun. It was the start of one of the most gruesome fronts that eventually would become infamous for its violence, murder, and persecution of innocent people. And at the same day, German ambassadors in Stockholm informed the Swedish Foreign Office that demands and requests were to be put out for the Swedish government, which since December 1939 was a coalition of all political parties in Sweden, minus the Communist Party. They had to make a decision whether or not they would allow German troops to cross and be transported through Swedish territory into Finland to assist on the northern parts of the Eastern Front. Now, this might sound a bit confusing, but I'll try and break it down for you all. Finland, a free country belayed to the east of Sweden, had given up a large number of land masses to the Soviets after an armistice in 1940, ending a 3-month-long winter war between the countries. They weren't sure at the time, but time suggested also that Finland would eventually join Nazi Germany into the war against the Soviets, which they did on June 26th, 4 days after the invasion started. Sweden, a country that reconciled itself with Finland as a brother in arms, had showed a lot of care for Finland during that time of the Winter War. They helped them a lot with funds, weapons and equipment, food, sheltering evacuated children, and even produced a small unit of volunteers which would see limited action on the front lines in Finland between December 1939 and March 1940. All of this played its part at later events during the Midsummer Crisis, since Sweden still reconciled itself as a brother in arms to Finland. A large debate on whether or not it was out of friendly relations with Germany that the government would accept the terms from the Nazi regime took its place, and it took a great deal of time between the different elected ministers before a decision came that Sweden would accept the terms on the basis that this was a one-time only deal. The fear of the politicians that Sweden would be dragged into the war was simply too big. One division of German troops and all of their equipment, the 163rd Infantry Division, nicknamed Engelbrecht, was to travel from the small town of Charlottenberg to the Swedish-Finnish border in the north of the country. 115 trains with 4 trips a day was put into the plan, and the Swedish Railroad Company charged the payment of 2 million Swedish kronor. At the time, that value in today's currency is worth about 44 million Swedish kronor or 4 million euros. A great amount of money. Now, this is something that has a lot of history to it and intrigues, and it's more than I can even begin to explain in a very short time video on YouTube. There are, however, some great quotes that may give you an idea of how tension rose when Germany put the demands and requests to Sweden. A quote from the German ambassador Karl Schnurre reads, for example, "To regard a Swedish no to the request as an unfriendly action would be too kind." Now, this quote was taken as a statement that Sweden would not be able to say no without being seen as an enemy of Germany. This was one of the biggest fears, to have Germany as an enemy. The discussions amongst the different political parties was also interesting. whereas the Social Democratic Party were more on the lines of saying no, and the right-wing parties were keener on saying yes. Now, this would lead into one of the most recognized quotes in Swedish political history, as one political figure from the Social Democratic Party, Ivan Pauli, said, "The Swedish hedgehog with all the spikes outward, and all it takes is a fucking German fox to piss on it, and it lays on its back." Based upon this story, we see something very special: the Swedish involvement, and even though they didn't engage with fighting troops going into some major battle, it shows that the direct involvement of helping one of the fighting powers in this great conflict during the escalation of World War II that we have never seen before. It was an escalation never been even seen possible. It was 3 million men entering Russia at that time from the German armed forces. And we don't even see Operation Barbarossa in Battlefield 5. We don't see the Soviet forces. We don't even get to see some fractions out of that part of the front lines. We don't get to see the Finnish-Soviet Winter War of 1939-1940. It's simply not there. And even so, we could have seen something from an interesting point of view when it comes to the war stories, with maybe a German soldier traveling through Sweden going towards the front lines of the Northern Eastern Front. I just came up with that idea the other day, and I hope that this is an idea that has reached a DICE developer team before. And I'm not saying it was neglected, but if it was, I wanted to know that, was it because you couldn't do it, or was it because you didn't have enough time? The information about these things, why we haven't seen it, and why we haven't gotten it put into action, it's something that I'm missing a lot from for the community's sake. That DICE needs to be more open on why we haven't seen these things and why we're seeing these things instead. I know they talked a lot about it on EA Play a couple of weeks ago, but we didn't get any more specific information on why we're going to the Pacific before we go into the Eastern Front. Looking upon the timeline the game has been released, we see the game going to the Western Front in 1940, Norway, and then we're going to Greece. So it follows a very basic timeline of how the war actually went on, how it looked like. Now, I am not surprised that DICE and EA, based upon the results for Battlefield 5, that the timeline is being broken and we see the Pacific before the Eastern Front. I get it, because there's a lot of questions along where the maps are. But I would like to see the questions that are still unwrapped, that DICE takes responsibility and try to answer these questions in such a good way that we can understand why the game is taking this direction as it does. Now, if someone from the developer team ever sees this, the questions that I'm asking are very clear, because it has to do with the fact that we are still missing a lot of maps, weapons, fractions, gadgets, and more, especially gadgets and weapons. Maps, I can't stress this enough. The game was half complete when it came out, and it's not complete in any way at the moment. You can do so much better. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying you're doing bad, but I'm saying you can do so much better. And especially around the untold war stories that were so good in Battlefield 1, but somehow you managed to lose the glance of it in this Fallout version. I'm wondering if this was a part of your plan, or was it too much work? I just want to see clearance and questions answered. I want to see DICE showing up and taking responsibility and talking to us, because I know that you can do so much better. I know you're being honest when you talk to us. I miss this, because not everybody is following developers on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter, Instagram, and so on. Not everybody's doing that. I need someone to reach out and talk to us and answer these questions as good as they can, because even if the developers answer some questions sometimes, it's not very clear because they don't want to spoil too much and stuff like that. But I don't know. I would like to see some honesty, more honest opinions from you, and more basic explanations. We're simpletons, all of us. We need to know. We need to know because we care for you. And if you disappear, we will have no meaning when it comes to gaming. Battlefield 5 has to survive because of the community. A question out to the community itself. What do you think? And if you are going to have an opinion, you're just going to say it to yourself. I don't want you to do that. Please comment down below here on the channel. And I want to see that comment section filled with thoughts and ideas of what you think. And constructive thoughts, but honest. Be honest. If you like the video, put a thumbs up, just to click on and do a thumbs up. And share it if you enjoy the video. Show your friends. I think you should have a comment down below and tell them what you think. If you know somebody who loves Battlefield and has a lot of ideas and thoughts, share it to them so they can comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos. There's more videos to find out. My name is Mr. Pro Steele, and I thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.